Hey y'all, Kitsuragi here, and welcome to Rant, Rave, and Review, my series for reviewing games. In this episode, we are going to be covering Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights is a new entry in the WB's Batman series video games. Though not directly tied to the Arkham series, it is the spiritual successor in a sense, and there are many points will be going over in this review. Gotham Knights overall feels like a very well-rounded game. It looks absolutely stunning for what the development team had, and we're going to focus on the graphics first. Just want to get this one out of the way. As stated, it looks stunning. The graphics are great, and you can very much tell that they put a lot of time and effort in making this game look and feel like Gotham should, and the characters do look great. For the most part, I played a lot of Jason Todd or Red Hood in this game, so we got to see his big hulking mass on the screen a lot of the time. Not comically accurate, but I don't mind that. But of course, I did get to play as Barbara Gordon or Batgirl as well for some of the side quests, and they did an amazing job making every character look really good and giving them great assets. Though graphically beautiful, there are still some issues that came about in my play that kind of ruined it a little bit, not greatly, just broke the immersion. I did play this on a PS5, so it wasn't as bad as, a lesser system or the PC. I don't even think it came out on the PS4, but we won't get into that. And these are just like minor glitches or things like, Jason Todd's hoodie straps pointing straight out. And they were right there in a cutscene that I could not avoid, and they ruined the entire cutscene for me. Minor complaints on that. The capes just didn't flow well. They felt like they kind of wanted to go everywhere. But overall, graphically, it looks really good, and they did a really good job with that. Next, we'll go into the combat of the game. Combat isn't as fluid as an Arkham Asylum game or an Arkham game per se. But I think that lends credence to who we're playing. We're not playing Batman, we are playing Nightwing, Robin, Red Hood, and Batgirl. So each one gets their own very unique styles of play that really complement each other and themselves. For the most part, like I said, I played a lot of Red Hood. Red Hood, I pretty much built up being this tanky powerhouse that threw everyone with bombs and blew up the bombs that made more bombs. Okay, they're not bombs, they're mines. But you can see where I'm going. I played him a completely different style than someone else probably did, which probably would be a brawler who focuses on his guns. My Batgirl is set up to be in long fights with lots of enemies. And each one plays completely different in how they approach their combat, in a sense, in how their hits hit and how they feel when they hit, and how they dodge and how their dodges work. Again, Red Hood isn't very nimble, so there's a lot of times I was taking hits. Now we're going to address the frame rate, because the frame rate does change some things about combat, but that's a different portion of that. Again, every character felt good to play, and each one felt unique to themselves. They didn't all feel like Batman copies, which I appreciate, and that does stand out a lot for me in this game. As for, let's go with the world exploration. The world is beautiful. I mean, it's Gotham. I love the gothic settings that they have, and everything looks like Gotham should in a sense, with the high rises and how the buildings are and everything. But it is a little bit brighter than what the Arkham series gave us and what people are used to. And I think that's kind of more credence towards the story aspect, and we'll get into story in a little bit. And I love roaming around in the streets. It felt great. Being on top of the rooftops felt great. But I feel that was taken away a little bit too quickly. With the knighthoods of the characters gaining abilities to traverse a little bit easier, specifically since I played as Red Hood and Batgirl. And then being able to get unlocked fast travel pretty early on in the game, you don't really get to experience Gotham streets as much for a very long time. I feel like that was kind of a downside to this game. Maybe giving us the knighthoods but taking away the fast travel, I think that would have been fine, because the map, as big as it is, isn't huge. So touching back on a little bit, we talked about combat and how that is. Let's go over the overall gameplay of this. Again, every character feels unique. Everything felt great. The big drawback to that comes down to what this game was designed around. And unfortunately, this game was, and you can definitely tell, is designed around being a multiplayer experience, having a second person there, which of course when you do multiplayer, it does increase the difficulty. It does make enemies a little bit harder to kill, which is a good thing, but it really shows prevalent in this game that it was meant to be a multiplayer, meant to be a co-op throughout the entirety of this game, especially with boss fights, and primarily the side arc fights. The secondary fights in this game are definitely more tuned for a two-player experience. There are many times in this that I was going through going, this would be great if I had a second player. And that's kind of what it falls down to. I feel that really does kind of weigh a little bit heavier on this game. Fights feel great, but when you get into these boss fights, even in main story, they do stagger a little bit, and it does feel like if you are playing on any difficulty, I'm pretty sure easy is pretty easy, but on any difficulty, it definitely feels like, hey, this was meant to have a second player in here helping you fight this boss or helping you deal with some of these enemies, because there are some enemies in this game that really just pissed me off, that really were the bane of my existence. And if I had a second player there while I was dealing with the group of these enemies, it would be way easier overall. And again, it's a very big negative to me in that aspect. It does hurt the game a lot. Of course, let's address the elephant in the room, the frame rate. Now, again, I played on a PlayStation 5, so my frame rate was locked to 30 frames. I know on the PC it has frame rate issues. We're just dropping down to like 12. I know you can stabilize it if you just select 30, and I think that was the thing, is if you're at 30, it ran smoothly, but if you tried to do anything other than 30, it definitely showed. And very rarely did I feel any type of drops when playing it on the PS5, being it locked at 30 frames. I know there were some drops, but they weren't too staggering, and it wasn't in combat situations. And there's a conversation there that we can get into, but it still felt good. And I won't ever knock it for it being at 30 frames, considering some of the greatest games I've played are all locked to 30 frames. So it's not a negative on it, but I feel like if I was playing on PC, it probably would have been a downside to the game having such random frame issues. And I really feel that's where that comes in. So I will at least honor PC players in that and kind of judge it with that in mind as well. So the story in this entire game was good. I'm not going to say it was horrible. It was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't the best Batman type story, but it was good. I feel like once you start the game, you kind of realize who the main big bad's going to be, and it's kind of obvious. Some of the twists and turns that they have in this game, how it's set up, aren't particularly shocking. It kind of makes sense. And honestly, the best story points in this were the individual character stories. Each character has its own individual story aside from the main story. So there are little snippets. After you get to a certain point in the story, you get a new icon and you can go do some of these stories. Sometimes they are right there inside the Belfry, which is their tower, their bat cave essentially in this game. And sometimes they're out in the world. There's not that many of them, but they were all pretty good. And of course, the knighthood being something that was kind of put into this as your new abilities and everything, it also kind of has some credence with the story because it does reflect on what's going on with characters. And of course, if you don't know, Batman's died at the start of the game. You actually get to see that, and you get to see the enemies. And of course, I'm not going to spoil anything because there's going to be people who are going to pick this up later and went, oh, that's who it is. But the knighthood does give good little extra bits to the story and give some credence. There is also a little extra after you beat the game, a little story that you can get. And I think that was really well fit. And the overall arcing story was decent. It was good. I wouldn't sit there and claim game of the year for story, but it was good. I think it deserves a playthrough. There's a specific point in the story that I would actually suggest everyone tries to. It's later in the story, but I would suggest everyone plays it as every character. Each person has their own experience in this section, and I think it was a really good point and a really good section overall, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think that was probably the height of the story for me, was that section. So overall, what do I think of the game? Well, again, combat felt good. Every character felt unique. The exploration factor of this left more to desire. I really want more exploration in this. The frame rate doesn't bother me, but I will take judgment for PC players and everything like that. And the graphics, again, look great with some glitches here and there. Overall, it wasn't a bad game. Now, with that said, do I think the $70 is what I paid for price tag is worth that? Is it a good cost of entry? No, absolutely not. This game is definitely 100% not worth that $70. I can state that it does give you a replay factor, that they do have a new game plus in the game that does actually increase the level limit, which I didn't touch all in this, that this game plays like an RPG with levels that you have to get skills, but it's kind of already stated in every aspect of the game that you level up in this. And the new game plus increases the max level. So I think max level is 30 and it goes to 40 with the new game plus. That still does not overall change my overview of this game or how I feel about the game, because I still don't see $70 out of this. 100%, I would say if this game was $30 cheaper, on sale $40, I would say it's a good game for that. It does have some good play value, and we are still waiting for one update which will bring a 4-player co-op to the game, which I think will help it out. I think there's still some stuff that they can find and they can add into this game. I don't think they need to do paid DLC for a little bit. I think they need to give us some free DLC just to kind of appease the masses. Not saying that they should get paid for their work. I'm just saying that some sacrifices might need to be made on this, but overall, I think they've got a really good idea. I think they could do something better with the games, especially dealing with these characters. I think they have something good there and can focus on a new story. So overall, it's a good game. It's average, very much an average game, a little bit over it. If I have to give it a numbered rating, which I hate, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10. Definitely not the best Arkham or Batman game out there, because Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight are all amazing games and were so much better, and Arkham Knight definitely has a better traversal and overview of the world. But for what it is and what they're trying for, it's not bad. And definitely if you're playing with friends, it's definitely worth playing, but not at this cost. When it's on sale or it drops in price, maybe give it a check out. Thank you for checking out the review. Of course, guys, if you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, share this with a friend. Till next time, take care.